You're watching Business Incorporated live on Channels Television. Coming up, Egypt's central bank governor resigns amidst currency pressure and rising inflation. And grain prices fall as U.S. weather and Ukrainian grain shipments weigh on markets. Plus, South Africa government announced a national ban on moving cattle to curb the spread of foot and mouth disease. Hello and welcome to the program. Great to have you join us. I'm Ladi Williams. First off, let's take a look at how your money is performing at intraday. Starting with Africa, we see the NGX there, 49,688 points. It's down marginally by 0.04%. Moving on to South Africa, there we see it's still holding on to that 70,979 range there. It's down also 0.74%, mostly negative sentiment we're seeing in Africa. Moving on now to North Africa. Egypt index there, still below the 10,000 mark there, but it's the only positive we have today, up almost 1%. And Kenya closed again positive yesterday, up 0.12%. We're seeing those election results there, and investors seem happy with what they're getting there. Let's move on now to the Middle East. We see it's mostly all positive in the Middle East with markets we track. Qatar index there, 13,989 points, is up 1.75%. Big move there, almost 2%. Saudi there, 12,638 points. That's up almost 1% too, 0.75%. Other parts of the Middle East we track there, talking about the UAE, that's we're seeing positive sentiment there with Abu Dhabi up 0.45%. Dubai index there up over 1%. So it's looking quite good in the Middle East at intraday. Let's move on now to Europe. In a bid to cut reliance from Russian fuel, Germany secured commitment from major gas importers to keep 2 floating liquefied natural gas terminals fully supplied starting this winter. Now we have DW's Chris Koba joining us to give us the details. Great to have you, Chris. So what does this deal entail?
Well, the MOU is signed by a number of companies, and the German government states that 2 floating storage and regasification units, or FSRUs, will be fully supplied from their expected operational start this winter until March 2024. Now, by the way, among these gas importing companies is Uniper, which faced a financial crunch as it struggled to meet supply commitments and rocketing gas prices, and was bailed out by the German government in July with a 15 billion euro deal. Now, using these floating storage and regasification units, Germany will be able to receive up to 12.5 billion cubic meters of liquefied natural gas a year, which is the equivalent to about 13% of the country's gas consumption last year, according to researchers. German Economy Minister Robert Habeck said this was part of efforts to make the country independent and give it a robust and resilient energy infrastructure. The floating units are a stopgap measure until Germany can build 2 permanent LNG terminals, the first such terminals to be built in the country, to receive gas shipped from around the world instead of relying on Russian fuel supplied by pipeline. Now, Russia, which previously met about 40% of Europe's gas needs, has reduced flows, citing equipment issues, while Berlin says Moscow wants to, quote, blackmail Europe. And that's why Germany is racing to find alternative sources of gas, worried that Russia cuts supplies further or even halts them altogether. Berlin has already warned of possible gas rationing.
Right. Well, the gas pressure is still on Europe at this point. But where are they going to get the LNG from?
The companies responsible for supplying these units say they have LNG delivery contracts with 20 countries around the world. Global demand for LNG was already surging before the latest crisis as the world economy recovered from the COVID-19 pandemic and Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and has served to drive LNG demand even higher. But Germany's economy minister Habeck said German gas importers had been successful so far in procuring LNG cargoes from the global market, which he put at 500 billion cubic meters a year. Although talks between German importers and Qatar, which is a major LNG producer, have faltered. According to the minister, talks with Qatar were continuing, but he also said importers were looking broadly for the best deals on the market.
Right, quite interesting. We're watching how that drama unfolds, but how are the markets looking?
The mood has been somewhat more cautious. It's a bit of a mixed picture as investors are awaiting European growth figures as well as the latest Fed minutes to be published later today. Inflation and how to rein it in remains the crucial issue for markets. And that's why we see investors in Germany a bit more watchful today. The DAX, Germany's blue chips index, trading flat around 13,900 points. The biggest loser among the 40 companies listed in the DAX is Uniper, the struggling gas import company I mentioned earlier. It posted a net loss of more than $12 billion for the first half of the year. Its shares plummeting by around 9% in the early parts of today's trading session.
Right, you have so much to unpack there with Uniper and all the gas issues there. Thank you so much, Chris Koba, right there in Berlin. Now, so moving on to other markets. Now, New Zealand raises cash rate by another 50 basis points to 3%. That's the latest in a series of interest rate hikes in an effort to curb inflation. Elsewhere, Japan stocks surged following a better than expected export figure, and Australian wages also rose. Shanghai Composite closed higher by 0.45% at 3,292 points. The Shenzhen component also finished positive by 1.01% at 12,595 points. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index was about 0.46% higher. The Chinese food delivery giant Meituan shares have risen 3.34%. The move marks a rebound from the 9% plunge saw on Tuesday, which followed a report that Tencent is planning to sell the majority of its $24 billion stake in the company. Ahead of its second quarter earnings that were released, Tencent shares were flat. Japan's Nikkei 225 increased 1.23% to 28,868 points, while the Topix index added 1.26% to 1,981 points. Of the country reported better than expected exports growth for July. And moving on now to the U.S., we see stock futures fell as a rally that was propelled by equity prices. It's cooled off now. We're seeing mid-June appeared poised for a respite. Futures tied to the Dow Jones Industrial Average fell about 209 points. The S&P 500 futures there, the NASDAQ 100 there, trading lower. All markets down, talking about the futures pointing to where the markets might actually close today. Well, the Dow notched its best performance. We saw a fifth straight day of gains on Tuesday. Meanwhile, the S&P 500 is going for its fifth positive week in a row as investors continue to gauge how much strength this rally has. The broad market index is now up 18% from its June lows. Traders today we're looking ahead to the release of U.S. retail sales data. And I think we got that, and it's not looking good, and we see the markets already reacting to that. Let's move on now, heading to Ghana. We see the Bank of Ghana has announced it's convening an emergency monetary policy committee meeting. That was yesterday, and that's supposed to be happening today. Let's discuss this and other matters now with Stephen Kotoche, researcher at Vault News, right there in Ghana. Great to have you, Stephen.
Thank you, William.
Yeah, so what are the expectations for this emergency meeting?
Yeah, actually, we are expecting the Monetary Policy Committee to hike the policy rate a little bit, at least by 200 to 250 basis points, because in July, when they held the meeting, they actually decided to hold the policy rate because they felt that the previous hike in May is yet to make the impact, and also because they felt that the rate at which inflation was increasing was actually happening at a decreasing rate. But just after that, inflation came in to 31.7%. That is in July. So it has widened the rate between the policy rate and inflation rate, and it's not really looking good. So we expect them to at least close that gap a little bit by hiking the policy rate.
Interesting for the bank to be calling for an emergency meeting at this point. But another matter, we saw the central bank there planning to buy domestic gold in September. So what is the Bank of Ghana there trying to achieve with this gold purchase?
Yeah, actually, the gold purchase program is just another avenue to diversify the ways Bank of Ghana builds its reserves. So what they are trying to do is to go to the small-scale mining companies and gold aggregators, buy the raw gold from them, then pay them using the local currency at the prevailing exchange rate. Then the Bank of Ghana will then get a refinery that will refine the gold into the pure form. Then it will be kept as a form of reserve for the Bank of Ghana, just to show off the reserve that they have, which is fast depleting.
Right. So what price do you think they'll be looking to set this gold? I'm guessing it's going to be in local currency.
Yes, it's going to be in local currency, but the price will depend on the volume actually that they get from the buyers, and also they are going to look at the standard pricing of gold in addition to the prevailing exchange rate, that's the cedi to dollar rate, to actually come up with that they are going to pay a particular aggregator or small scale mining company.
Quite interesting. Most African countries looking to gold at this time. But what impact do you think this program will have on, the small-scale gold mining sector?
Yeah, we expect the impact of this purchasing program to be positive, as in it's going to bring some kind of revolution to the small-scale mining industry, which is characterized by a lot of informality. So they believe that by purchasing the gold from them, it will create that kind of fair pricing regime for them to be able to sell their gold at a higher price, and also to protect them from the vulnerabilities of unlicensed dealers in the market, both foreign and local.
Quite interesting, because we're already seeing Zimbabwe reap some benefits from their own gold purchase program. Thank you so much, Stephen Kotiche, researcher of Volts News Ghana. It was great having you.
Yeah, welcome, Willie.
All right, now, so let's take a look at what's happening with the oil markets now. Oil hit a 6-month low today after a brief rally, as concerns about the prospect of a global recession would weaken demand overshadowed a report showing lower U.S. crude and gasoline stocks. Figures on today did little to improve the economic backdrop, showing British consumer price inflation jumped by about 10.1% in July, its highest since February 1982, intensifying a squeeze on households. Brent crude fell as low as $91.51. That's the lowest since February, and that was the WTI was down about 4 cents at $92.30. Well, let's see that the market is quite volatile at this point. Earlier, prices gained support from a report showing lower U.S. crude and fuel stocks, with crude stock fell about 448,000 barrels and gasoline by about 4.5 million barrels. All right, we'll take a break now. When we come back, more stories on the African continent. Just stay with us. This is Business Incorporated. Welcome back. Now to our next conversation. Following escalating prices of aviation fuel, risen to an average of from 400 naira per litre in February 2022 to about 800 naira per litre in recent times. Stakeholders have raised concerns about this impact on Nigeria's aviation industry. Joining us now is Deco Austin, CEO of Gatewind Travels and Tours. Join us via Zoom. Great to have you on the show. So industry stakeholders have raised alarm about the pressures in Nigeria's aviation industry. What do you think is the way forward right now?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. The way forward, we think, is for the government to set up a committee to address all the perennial issues. The Jet A1 fuel has been going up on a daily basis. The government should set up a committee to address this. They should provide the necessary support to all the stakeholders, the air operators, and they should also allow industry players to have direct talks and negotiations with foreign partners, to help solve these challenges.
And how is it, impacting the travel at this time with the flyers? How are they handling all of this?
Yeah, well, people will definitely react negatively when it affects their finances. Because, take for instance, the local tickets now go between 70,000 to around 100, 120 on the average. So this has taken a toll on the travelers. And you're looking under the international flights. You have tickets going from as low as 600,000 to even 1.5 million. So it's on a negative side. Travels have actually, taken a dip in itself, and this is affecting businesses because people can move from one part to another, considering the high cost of these tickets.
And it's quite interesting because in the past you could get, economy tickets for, around 200K and lower, but that's for international flights. But now we're getting economy tickets for over ₦1 million flying international. So I'm wondering, should we create another kind of economy ticket at some point?
Yeah. Well, I think the government needs to step in really, because again, leaving the air operators, to face their challenges, and of course, you look at one of the big challenges is foreign scarcity. The foreign airlines can't even repatriate their funds from Nigeria, which is not even a good image, for us out there, because again, when you have about 15 to 20, 25 foreign airlines, that means an interaction with 15 to 20 nations. So this is on a negative side. So there should be some level of a high level intervention from the federal government to, cushion this effect. And most times, whatever goes up in Nigeria, it takes a while to come down. So we're praying for government to really intervene in this sector.
Yeah, but before you, what are the options for the airline operators at this time?
Sorry?
I said, for you, what do you think are the options for the airline operators?
Yeah, well, for the airline operators, I feel they have to keep engaging the regulators, NCA, the federal government, the Senate, House of Representatives, and they should engage all of these people and, have such that they will be able to have a leeway into some of their of these problems, such that, they can even get operating licenses to bring in aviation fuel, cutting off the middlemen. This is one of the things they can option they can look at, and also there should be adequate communication to the end users as well. The customers will discover that is lacking within the from the air operators. Flights are being cancelled, and no adequate communication to people. Flights are being moved, to some other time. No adequate communication to those to the consumers, and they should also minimize. We know that yes, there are so many challenges, but they should minimize indiscriminate hike in fares, such that the people can have a good understanding, with them.
Yeah, well, it's been called the year of the squeeze, but how's the travel agency business handling all of this?
Yeah, well, just like the travel agent is more like a medical doctor who will always attend to the request of the patient. So we try to look for best options, in terms of prices and in terms of less layovers, because we even have airlines, who would go, like some foreign airlines would go as far as to Ghana to get a jet aviation fare who fly passengers to their destinations, So we try to talk to the clients, seek cheaper fares for them, and also look for alternative connecting routes, with less layovers for them.
Quite interesting. I can imagine how difficult it is finding cheaper flights at this time. Thank you so much, Decker Austin, CEO, Gateway Travel and Tours. It was great having you.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right. Let's take a look at other stories now. Nigeria's central bank has increased interest rates on savings deposits to 4.2%. Central Bank of Nigeria has ordered banks in Nigeria to pay a savings deposit account at interest rate of about at least 4.2%. That's an increase from 1.4% previously received. This was contained in a circular dated August 15th, 2022, titled "A Review of the Interest Rate on Savings and Deposits," and signed by Director of Banking Supervision. According to the Apex Bank, the hike in savings interest rates, which is effective from August 1st, was made in light of the return to complete normalcy after taking into account the current macroeconomic conditions. And the South African government has announced a national ban on moving cattle to curb the spread of foot-and-mouth disease. Cattle may not be moved from one property to another for a period of at least 21 days. According to the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, so the cattle that are ready at shows, auctions, and en route to the Republic will be given 48 hours to be permitted to move to final destinations after being sold. There will also be exceptions, including if there's a veterinary permit for direct slaughter at the registered abattoirs and for slaughter for ritual purposes. The country is currently experiencing 116 incidents of food and mouth disease involving farms, feedlots, and communal areas in KwaZulu-Natal, Limpopo, Northwest Gauteng, and Mpumalanga and Free State. An Egyptian central bank governor has resigned, and the Egyptian president Abdel Fattah el-Sisi accepted the resignation of central bank governor Tariq Amer. The state-run Al-Ram actually reported that, and the shock decision was proposed by the banker there, the interest rate meeting, and with pressure mounting on the currency. Amer was appointed as a presidential advisor, and no further details were given on his resignation. And he didn't say who would be the next governor of the central bank right there in Egypt. Derivatives traders added to bets for a weaker pound in the non-deliverable forwards market. The three-month contract was around 20.9 per dollar Wednesday, compared with 20.4. That was yesterday. The spot rate was also later changed at 19.15% against the dollar in the offshore market. The departure throws more uncertainty into the mix for an economy that's under pressure from the spillover effects of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. As a drama-filled time in office included a steep currency devaluation during his first 4-year stint and another in March. And now looking at the grain market, we see Chicago corn, wheat, and soybean futures fell for a second day today, pressured by rainfall across parts of the U.S. Midwest, as well as economic uncertainty in China and grain shipments from war-torn Ukraine. The most active soybean contract on the Chicago Board Trade sold for about 31 for a quarter of a cent at $13.81 a bushel, while the CBOT corn sold for about $6.10 per bushel, while the CBOT wheat ended down 15 cents to $8.02. Soybeans extended Monday's losses after falling to their lowest in more than a week as an unexpected interest rate cut in China found worries about faltering growth in the world's biggest soy importer. And with the grain story, now we end the show today. Thank you so much for watching Business Incorporated. Do remember, you can watch us again on our YouTube channel. Just search for Channels Television on YouTube. Thank you for watching. I'm Ladi Williams. Bye for now.